Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, why are Silver Spring free-range parents being cited by Child Protective Services? Marriott gets ready to leave Montgomery County, Bechtel gets ready to leave Maryland, and frantically stressed Marylanders wait for economic rebound. District of Columbia goes for pot, and get ready for Mikulski musical chairs as the long-term senator exits the stage and the wannabes take their mark. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by education activist Cynthia Rubenstein, attorney and former Republican candidate for county executive Jim Shalleck, former Republican candidate for state delegate Rose Lee, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. The Silver Spring parents who believe in, and I love this term, free-range parenting, and were investigated after police picked up their children's ages 6 and 10 walking home alone from a park in January, were reportedly found responsible for unsubstantiated child neglect this week. In January, you may recall, the Meitiv children were walking home from Woodside Park in broad daylight and were stopped by police after someone had reported seeing them. Child Protective Services immediately followed up and forced the parents to sign a safety plan acknowledging that they would not let their kids go unsupervised. And this is the best part of the story. Child Protective Services threatened that if they refused to sign the plan, the kids would be removed from their home. Cynthia, what is Child Protective Services doing in this case?
Well, they're following the letter of their law. They don't have any framework or understanding of free-range parenting. And while it sounds and is a lot of common sense, Child Protective Services just doesn't have a way to understand this, and then therefore doesn't have a way to apply it. So, but the parents are appealing the decision. What it means is that they are on record for the next 5 years. With this on their record, they're going to appeal it and hopefully have it dismissed.
Jim, the media is having a field day with this. And is it fair to cite Child Protective Services if they're just doing their job?
Well, Casey, this is a very important topic. And in today's world, not the world when we were young kids, but in today's world of violence and horrible things committed against our young people, this is an important topic, and Child Protective Services is to be applauded that they've raised this issue. Casey, there's a lot of evil, bad people out there.
There are a lot of evil, bad
and
people.
we've got to protect our young kids. It's an important topic.
But there are a lot of evil and bad people. But the parents letting their kids walk to a park, that makes them evil?
Well, they're alone.
That's the same category.
No, they're not evil. No, they're not evil. They're supposed to be wonderful parents. But there's bad people out there. We've got to protect our children.
That's the whole point. Child
it was
broad.
It was
should
broad
focus
daylight.
their attention on the people that are bad, and not parents who want to give their kids independence. Susan.
Well, Child Protective Services is enforcing the law. The law in Maryland states that if a child under the age of 8 has to be with another child at least 13 years old. Now, in knowing that law, I've heard the parents interviewed multiple times, and in one conversation with different parenting styles, the mother, Mrs. Meitiv, said, you know, you've got to judge the maturity of the children. And my 10-year-old is a very wise child.
I want to go to Cynthia on this.
Yeah,
Cynthia.
number one, I think we've talked about it on this show. Child Protective Services has a very, very narrow interpretation. Do they worry about kids who are walking to and from school for over at least a mile? 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 6-year-olds walk to school every single day to and from for at least, many kids for at least a mile. And so what is the difference here?
Well, they were alone.
But many kids walk home from school alone.
Well, the thing is, they were alone coming back from a park, and they've got to be protected. I mean, even though the parents are well-intentioned, there are people out there that take advantage of children, and they can't defend themselves, these kids.
Go ahead, Rose.
Can I just say, though, but I feel like the response was disproportionate to the action. And I think that the parents should have gotten a warning. Do they have to be on probation for 5 years? I mean, do they have to have it on their record?
Well, that's an issue. That's to be considered. But I think the dialogue, you asked me about the media, I think it's important that it was publicized so people can have this dialogue. Very important.
Well,
And the phrase
wrap it
that's
up.
used with them is unsubstantive, and that means that there are conflicting reports and nothing serious. So it's
You guys, this
you know.
is just wrong. Child Protective Services should be focusing their attention on people who are abusing their kids and not these two
But
poor
it is
parents.
And they
It's a law.
do, and they do.
Fine, we're
And
going
they
on to
do.
the next topic. Last week, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser signed into law a law which allows people to legally grow and share marijuana in private. The law allows individuals to possess up to 2 ounces of pot or up to 3 mature plants for their own personal use, while the sale of marijuana remains illegal. Susan, is this a good idea?
I personally am against legalized marijuana. I think it's great for medical purposes, but the voters in D.C. Voted in November to make legalized marijuana. I think Congress should stay out of it. But one of the results of this law is that the D.C. voters are upset that they can't go into clubs and do it there because they're saying, we don't want to do it in our home in front of our children. Well, at the moment, because of the way it's written, they have to stay in their homes, and more power to them, but it's not for me.
Thank you, Susan. Rose, what do you think?
I also think, DC can do what it wants, but for Maryland, I really hope we don't follow along that same path. I think we should wait and see, and I think the harm to children, adolescents who are increasingly finding it acceptable to use marijuana, and I think it's sending the wrong message by legalizing recreational use, because it tells the kids, oh, there's nothing wrong with it, but actual research shows there's very convincing scientific evidence, long-term studies showing that there's long-term neuropsychological decline for people who start smoking marijuana on a regular basis. The younger you start, the more severe those things are, and even if you stop when you're an adult, you never get back the brain function that you lost.
Well, in D.C., they are very adamant that this is for adults and not for children.
That-
Although they would probably have more access to it if mom and dad have
But that's
marijuana
what
in the basement.
that's what the data is showing, is that
That
more
is
and
true.
more teenagers are starting to use it. 17% of people who start using it as teenagers become addicted. These are not statistics that are, made up. It's the truth, and there's more prevalence.
And
of,
it's a gateway drug too,
Yeah.
Casey. I mean, the studies show that they go from marijuana to harder drugs like cocaine. So it's a gateway drug, and that's a good argument against it. You go from one step to the next. You want to get another high, you want to get higher, and you go to the next drug.
Well, and it was interesting that this was one of the centerpieces of Heather Mazur's legislative package when she was running for governor. And it didn't take her very far, I don't think. I think most
No,
Marylanders
it did take her far. It was important to get it out on the table in Maryland so that people could grapple with the issue. One of her most important tenets was that the impact on the criminal justice system and the people who are behind bars for very, very minor possession charges.
There's a difference between decriminalization, though,
And-
and legalization. And I think most people in Maryland are for decriminalization. But it's the legalization that she talked about that was very offensive to a lot of voters.
Exactly.
so I
But
think
we're
in
going
this
to
case,
continue
you
to
gotta,
grapple with this because I think there are large numbers of people who want to normalize our understanding of marijuana in the state.
But what I don't understand is, where are the anti-smoking activists? The people that are always out there saying, cut smoking. Marijuana is even worse than smoking. There's no filter on people when they smoke it. There's all kinds of things mixed in with the marijuana leaves, and nobody has any idea of what's actually in.
Well, Montgomery County activists are still out there because we've just now banned e-cigarettes. So they're still out there. Maybe that'll be their next effort.
Well, I think Rose makes a great point. I mean, there are anti-smoking activists who want to criminalize or ban parents from being able to smoke in front of their children. It seems to me that the marijuana is the mystique drug that has some popularity, but really is as dangerous as we're all discussing here this afternoon. And I gotta admit, when you look at what Governor Hogan wants to do with respect to heroin and battling the addiction problem that exists in Baltimore, I think he actually should come out and make a stronger statement about what D.C. has done. This is a bad precedent for our locale to have so immediately and readily close to us, because all you have that people are growing lots of those three little plants in their basement for every member of the family. So it's not going to be. You've let the genie out of the bottle on this one. I think it's a bad idea and bad public policy.
I'm not worried about it.
You're not worried about it?
I am not worried about it. I am more worried about people who drink and drive.
And
I'm more worried about underage drinking.
You think they're going to toke up and not want to go out and get some brownies? Come on. They're going to get in their car.
It is dangerous too.
They're going to get in their car and they're going to kill people.
Except that even more dangerous than smoking or drinking alcohol is the effect that it appears to have of texting and driving, which is even more dangerous.
Correct. Bad human habits.
Oh, God. You guys, I don't know where this show is going tonight. But when we come back from this short break, is the business climate in Maryland, it's changing, and it may be for the worse, as two major companies get ready to leave the state, and who's going to succeed long-term Senator Barbara Mikulski in 2016? Stay tuned. It was announced this week that Marriott International, the preeminent hotel company, is considering moving from Montgomery County. And it was also learned this week that the engineering firm Bechtel was moving out of Frederick and into Virginia. Susan, how big a blow is this to a state to have such prominent companies depart?
Well, of course, any departure is unfortunate. I can't speak to the Bechtel issue, but in the case of Marriott, I will tell you that Ike Leggett isn't going to, just bow down and say goodbye, Marriott. The county is working very closely with Marriott. I know Cynthia wants to talk about this move, but the county is working to address the issues that they have raised, and I think every company from now on is going to be looking at some of the same issues. The county is cognizant of it, but I find it really unfortunate that just a few short years ago, it seems like just yesterday, but I know it's longer, the state and the county gave the Marriott corporations tens of millions of dollars in tax breaks to stay here. And now, the money is still floating out the county coffers, and they're leaving, which I think is really unfortunate.
Let me just comment on about Bechtel. The president of Bechtel took a little shot at Maryland when they made the announcement, because he said that they informed the O'Malley administration that they were leaving or thinking of leaving, and the O'Malley administration never responded. So the fact is, and let's be real here, all states compete for these big businesses and these big companies to locate and stay here. So we're going to go to Cynthia now. I know you want to talk about the public transportation and the feel-good stuff that deals with
and I will.
The green energy. But let's face it. When we were here last week, we talked about the fact that the county executive, Leggett, is going to raise real estate taxes to pay for the county budget and to pay for the public employees' benefits that he keeps increasing while the taxpayers keep footing the bill. So why is this a good idea?
Well, it's not definitive. Ike Leggett is waiting for the latest revenues to come in. He's also waiting to see what happens on the state level with how much money is coming from the state. He doesn't want to raise taxes. But I want to move on to the real reasons that Marriott is looking to relocate. They have a workforce that does not want to work in an office park anymore. They're millennials and Gen Xers, and they want to be in an more urban environment with lively amenities, and they want to be close to public transit. So that does not mean they're going to leave Montgomery County. We have the White Flint area, which is on its way to being developed over the next 30 years into a very integrated, mixed-use, transit-friendly urban environment. And there's no reason that could not be the next location for Marriott.
So why does Marriott even, if Marriott wants to stay and move to White Flint or somewhere that has metro, they don't have to say that they're going to leave the state.
Well, they have to look at their options.
This is a negotiation.
It's a negotiation, and they have to look at their options, and they're going to be courted.
Remember,
they're going to be courted.
Marlon Brando said it in The Godfather. You got to make them an offer they can't refuse. This would be devastating if Marriott and Bechtel leave the state. And Marriott for the county, it's our signature corporation, global corporation. We have to do everything we can to keep them.
Choice International moved up
Marriott
to Rockville.
they're philanthropic. They're a centerpiece of our economy.
And if I recall, when this happened the last time that they were going to leave the state of Maryland, is when the pot was sweetened and they stayed and they said, we love Montgomery County. So I think it's just, a couple years have gone by and it's time to, okay, what can we get now in terms of, a little.
Well, you're pretty cavalier about this. I mean, what if Marriott actually does leave?
I think that's possible, but what I said is the county executive is on it. The county is working with them, which is what they did in the past, and I think it is a little presumptuous to say that Marriott is leaving Maryland. Bechtel, yes. Marriott, no. And I think when naysayers like you keep saying they're moving...
Why are you happy that Bechtel moved?
I am not happy, but Bechtel is a fait accompli. This is not a fait accompli, and I think we should all be very upbeat and positive and let Marriott know we want them to stay here, and they are a great...
I want to ask Rose, because, Rose, you ran for state delegate. If you had been elected and this issue was before you, how would you respond?
I really think that the legislature needs to work closely with Governor Hogan and try to make Maryland much more business friendly. Even the Augustine Commission report that came out that was supported by Democratic administration, they commissioned it. Even his report says you can't just have economic incentives. Just that alone isn't going to do anything when your entire entrepreneurial ecosystem isn't facilitating having businesses want to come here. There's much bigger problems that are systemic that really need to be addressed. Governor Hogan is trying to address that, and I really think the legislature, the assembly needs to be working in concert, and now they've got the ammunition to do that too with the Augustine report.
All right, but if this was just a negotiation to get corporate largesse out of the state and the county, would you be in favor of it?
To keep the companies here.
I think it's beyond corporate largesse. I think it's kind of a mindset and culture. The difference, when corporations in Maryland look at Maryland, they look at Maryland, and I read this in the Washington Business Journal.
Come on, we got to go.
Okay.
We got to talk about Mikulski.
I'll bring it up again.
Marriott's just doing the dance. Mm-hmm. They just want some sweeteners. They want some sugar to stay here. And I hope Ike and Governor Hogan deliver on this. All right. Now let's talk about the real meat tonight. 5-term Senator Barbara Mikulski announced that she will not seek another term. The announcement by Ms. Mikulski set off speculation about who will want to replace her. Rose, what's your prediction?
Well, we've already seen Chris Van Hollen throw down the gauntlet, and he's already lined up endorsements from Frosch and Leggett, so he's going to be a formidable force. But I think that since Hogan won the election in all of Maryland, it's a very good year for a Republican candidate to come forward. It's possible that that person could win, because there's sentiment to fight a lot of fights that appeal to Republicans.
Let's see what the Democrats on the panel think, because they think they own this state. Susan, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it took a lot of us by surprise when Senator Mikulski announced, because I think it was 2 weeks ago, she was at the Montgomery County Democratic Brunch, and she got up there and made her pitch, and she said, and I need you next year to win. I want your support. I need your support. So out of it, I think Chris Van Hollen is very astute in laying the gauntlet down. We have never had a U.S. Senator from Montgomery County. And for those of us who thought maybe someday he would be Speaker, I admire and respect him. And as it goes down the line, theoretically, every single congressman in this state, except Steny Hoyer could be vying for this seat. And if that were to happen, the clout that Maryland has in Congress would be diminished greatly. And that would be very, very, very unfortunate. But to go to Rose's point,
Why would we be diminished?
because of seniority. We wouldn't have the seniority we have right now.
So you're saying Van Hollen's a turncoat, is that what
No,
you're saying?
I'm not saying that, because they're all going to do it. It's like the floodgates have opened, and that doesn't happen.
I want to go to Jim now.
Casey, what's going to be more fun for me to watch is the local scene. Who's going to replace and run for Van Hollen's seat? And if Delaney,
let's
and
not
if-
get ahead, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
but it's
here.
the ripple down
That's
effect
exactly
is fascinating.
the floodgate.
We
But-
love the musical chairs.
Yeah.
We love the political
And if
musical
Delaney
chairs.
gets into it, then you got 2 congressional seats up for grabs. All the council
well,
people.
you forgot Donna Edwards, John Sarbanes.
It's gonna be fascinating.
Rubersberger, Elijah Cummings. Then
Stephanie
there is,
Rawlings Blake in Baltimore.
Yes, and
It's gonna be a
Kathleen
great
Kennedy
year.
Townsend
Yeah,
and
but
Anthony
they're
Brown.
not all going to look. They're all going to have their political toes in the water. But what Van Hollen did
was
by,
astute.
by immediately coming out was he's going to suck up the donors. That's the
And he already has $1.7 million. But I want to respond
This
to
is going to be a
Rose's.
$10 million,
Easy.
$20 million.
Well, what
million.
Rose said about
campaign.
Republicans, I think that it would be great to have someone from Montgomery County, but I think the Democrats are in a good shape because it's a presidential year. And Democrats come out in presidential years, and I don't understand why, and you try to explain to some voters the importance of other elections, and they don't get it. So if the Democrats come out in the force that we know they can do it, it will be a Democratic seat, and it would be great if it was
But they're going to
someone
have a
from
bloody primary, the Democrats.
Primary's going to
They're
be
going
But
to eat each other up, and
primary-
that's
You
going
know
to help
what?
the Republicans.
delicious.
It might be delicious, but maybe, for once we can get our act together, and maybe a couple of these people will
Oh, yeah,
step
maybe
back.
we just fall in line, just behave themselves.
That's never been the case. Democrats.
And you got to
don't-
remember, Baltimore, as much as we like to think Montgomery County is the center of the universe, Baltimore thinks they're the center of the
But
universe.
they don't have the votes like they used to.
The other thing that's going to be interesting to see is whoever else does step up in the Democratic primary, how they're going to peel across the state. Chris Van Hollen is very popular and very well known as a progressive.
Where?
In Montgomery County.
Where? In Montgomery County.
In Montgomery County. He's going to have to appeal to the Eastern Shore, to Western Maryland, to Baltimore County.
But the advantage that Chris Van Hollen has, though, is because
You're
of
not even
his-
talking about Delaney. Delaney's got a deep pocket.
Yes.
And he definitely wants to run.
But there are also rumors that he wants to run for governor, so he may hold his powder dry for a bit. But the thing with Chris Van Hollen is, for people who are even slightly engaged, any of us who read the paper
he
or
comes
watch.
off as so arrogant. I don't think
No,
he's
that's-
got a,
no,
I don't think
not
he's got. I don't think
so.
he's got legs
No.
outside of Montgomery
Oh,
County.
no. And the thing is,
I'm
with-
just saying he's going to have to prove himself across the entire state.
But
He's
a lot
very
of-
well known here.
But Cynthia, a lot of
Gotta
people
wrap
know
it
him in
up.
the rest of the state, whether you watch Fox, MSNBC, or
But
local
a
news.
lot of regular
Chris-
voters don't watch the Sunday morning talk shows.
But they see it
Thank
on
you.
local.
Thank you.
Well, I think the telling thing is going to be who Senator Mikulski
We got to wrap
endorses.
it. If she
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
we got to wrap it up. It'll be from Baltimore. Anyway, stay tuned for parting shots. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Jim Shalleck.
Casey, I hope this last snowstorm was the last. We are so tired
we
of
all?
it. But you know something? I want to give credit to the men and women that clear our streets and do the snow removal. After every big snow, by mid-morning, Montgomery County is up and running. You know, we take a few-hour hit, but the men and women that have done that have done a great job. Thank you.
Well, Jim, you do know that the entire county government was shut down yesterday.
Yeah, but the streets.
All the banks were closed
No,
yesterday.
I understand, but-
the federal government was
Yes,
closed yesterday.
but the snow removal by mid-morning, we're on the go in this town.
All right.
That's good.
I wish I was in your neighborhood because that wasn't the way it was in mine. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
I'm not done with the congressional politics. I think the District 8 primary race is going to be extremely interesting. So many people are lining up. I want to say that I hope we have a good crop of women who step forward for the District 8 primary, Democratic primary. Some of the names mentioned are Nancy Florine, Nancy Navarro, Valerie Irvin, I think is very, very interested. There is Aruna Miller, There's a lot of deep talent in Montgomery County.
We only have 1 minute, so you gotta be pithy.
The BLS report today was very good in terms of jobs. 10% unemployment rate when Obama came in. We have now created 2.5 million jobs, and for the last 12 months, over $250,000 jobs each
Thanks,
month.
Susan. Rose, you're gonna have a very brief first parting shot.
I think it's really refreshing that Larry Hogan, who's the first Republican governor in 8 years, is able to live up to his campaign promises, and that he's staring down the people that bring cost overruns to him and asking them to justify it and forcing them to be accountable. I think he carries a big stick and he's wielding it, and I love it.
Thank you, and I want to thank you all for being here. It may be chilly outside, but it was definitely hot in here. We had lots of fun tonight. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in tonight to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. And remember, you can follow us on Facebook. Oh, excuse me. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on, I get that
Happens every time.
every week. I get that all screwed up. Anyway, I am tweeting now, so follow me. Talk to you soon. Stay tuned next week for more hard-hitting political news from the state of Maryland. I'm Casey Aiken.